Life and death, it's all a dance. Talking love and giving chance. Laughs and tears, we're here to share. Join us now, we're always there.
Hi, everyone. How did you like our jingle? Okay. Genna, in all seriousness, how do you like the jingle?
There are a few things that are better than that jingle. Very few things.
A few things or there are
There
few
are
things?
very few things that are better than that jingle.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like it really sums up what we're trying to do in jingle form.
I agree. It took us a very long time to record that audio of ourselves singing that song, and when I dressed up as that butterfly and did that dance,
And standing still for so long as the flower. It was
I
rough.
know you did so
Thank
well.
you. Thank you.
You did such a good job.
Well,
Ugh, our jingle.
jingly.
Do you think we've gone viral yet? Like, this will obviously be
Oh, 100% yes.
this, like, is in the future, so I think we're already there.
Yes. No doubt. And I wonder, here's my question, is it the butterfly? Or is it the jingle? Or is it actually you and I?
I I definitely don't think it's the 3rd one.
Okay, great, perfect.
I it could be the 1st or the 2nd, but I don't think it's the
Right.
3rd.
That's fine. That's fine.
We're gonna get there, but the jingle's what pulls the people in, don't you think?
100%.
Genna, why are we here?
Oh my. We are here, Noelle. One reason I'm here. I'm gonna be let's be totally honest. This is the first episode, so I'm gonna be totally
Okay.
honest. I have seen you screen and spoke to you more in the last few weeks of us discussing doing this than I have since you moved. So for me, it's
I
very
know.
selfish reasons, actually. It's just so I actually get to see you. But then on the
Oh,
flip side, it's also to bring our gifts that we were given to people everywhere and share other people's stories and voices.
should we talk about our gifts? Do you wanna talk about your gift first, or do you want me to talk about my gift? Why don't you talk about your
Okay.
gift?
Well, my gift, I am a life coach, and in my past life, I worked for many, many years in the foster system with kids and families and absolutely loved it, everything about it. But I got to a point where I started noticing friends of mine and just in general, people in general at the age that transitions start happening with kids getting older and everything else, going through some relationship things. I lost some friends, leaving behind wives and husbands, and just noticing when that happened, there was people available for many parts of their transitions into their new life and their new normal. However, there didn't seem to be a lot of people there dealing with their new relationships that they might be having and current relationships that they have with themselves, with relatives, or if they're looking to move on into a future relationship. So, me being me, I can't do anything half ass. So, I went into a sex education program that was 2 years long. It was a fantastic program. I did love it. I loved it. It was a lot of information, but on top of that, I then went and got certified as a life and relationship coach. So I kind of combined the 2, so I'm able to help with a variety of things. I do feel a lot of people are uncomfortable talking about sexuality and intimacy. I am not those people. As my gift to everyone, I openly talk about, sexuality and intimacy concerns. I'm gonna leave it PG on here. That's kind of what I do, a little hodgepodge of everything, and I do coaching with men and women.
That obviously covers our life section of our title, which is how we came up with life and death. We will go over some of ChatGPT's suggestions after I tell you about the death part of the title.
Da-da-da. So, Noelle,
Dun, dun, dun.
let me give you a little intro. So before I knew you, Noelle, I had heard about your
Mm.
parents passing away, and then we met finally after knowing about each other for quite some time, and honestly, within the first couple weeks, I felt like I knew your parents. You did such an amazing job about incorporating them into your conversations and telling me about the things you look for out there as signs from them, and it just made me feel like I had known them forever. So, my question to you is, how did you go from that to writing your book that you just wrote?
So, Jenna, you bring up the death part of our title. So I lost my mom in 2013 after a battle with brain cancer, and then lost my dad pretty suddenly in 2015. So I wrote a blog whenever my mom was first diagnosed and would share whatever I wrote just on social media. And I had friends and family that were kind of keeping up with where she was within her diagnosis or where she was in her diagnosis. And I remember feeling like that was a really cathartic way of dealing with everything I was feeling because I'm not very good at expressing emotions verbally. I'm definitely much better at expressing them in writing. So, it sort of just became the canvas on which I spilled everything. So, anything that I was feeling on any given day, I went to this blog and would just type out, and a lot of times it was pretty contradictory with probably how I was presenting myself to my family and my friends because I was trying to be positive and convince everyone I was fine, and then I would come out and post these blog entries, and they were devastating and quite deep at times and quite shallow at other times. I had people over the years, I believe you were one of them, encouraging me to put it into a book and to publish it or self-publish it, and it wasn't until probably this last year that I started really toying with the idea and sort of looking into self-publishing and knowing that that was an option for a lot of people. I don't know if I would have gone or tried to go the traditional publishing route if that would have worked for me just because I told my story in a very specific way that uses a lot of swear words because I find that cathartic. So, spoiler alert to anybody that wants to read it and is really offended by the F word, don't do it. So, I finally kind of worked up the courage to go back through those blog posts, and I at times that was really, really difficult, and at times that was really more healing than I ever could have imagined it would have been. I spent probably the last year and a half going through all of those old blog posts and sort of tweaking them and fine tuning them and picking out the things that I didn't necessarily think were relevant to the overall story because I knew that I wanted it to be something that helped people. I knew that I wanted my story to hopefully resonate with people that have lost somebody that maybe don't have the same support system that I had because the recurring theme throughout all of my old blog posts was how much support I felt that I had and how much appreciation I had for everyone who was in our lives at the time, and that was my mom's outlook as well. Same with my dad. I mean, we were all just
Right.
very aware of the outpouring of love that we had, but I also know that not everybody has that. So that was, I guess, I had to sort of figure out what the intention was behind the book as a whole. It was definitely a labor of love. It took probably about a year to go through all of those because it definitely took an emotional toll and it I had to be in the right place to sit down and really go through it because obviously I didn't realize that I would lose my dad after that whole thing. So a lot of his little mannerisms and things that he was saying throughout that entire thing, because obviously my mom was sick, so she had changed a lot from who she was when I was growing up, but I was still reflecting on that. And that was much more recent in my mind than it is now 10 years later. A lot of the things that my dad like the conversations my dad was having with my mom and some of the memories that he would bring up. It's so cool to have all of that captured. And I am so glad that I was writing through all of that and that I have it to sort of look back on. I realized recently that I think I was probably a bit afraid of failure when people first started encouraging me to write the book.
Okay.
I don't know that I ever thought I could actually do it or follow through on it because I'm really good at starting things and being really excited about them for like a day and then giving up on them. Yeah, this was huge being able to actually say that I followed through on it, that I did it
Absolutely.
from start to finish. So that was a really long-winded
I
explanation
loved it.
of
I
death.
loved it. Yeah, I did there was a part when you said about you were putting one face forward, or your way was, like, talking to people and reminiscing and stuff. When my dad passed away, I was, like, the polar opposite, where, like, I didn't want to talk about anything. Like, I didn't wanna talk about the stories, I didn't wanna talk about anything. That took me, uh, many, many, many months, maybe even a year or so.
Do you feel differently about that now, or do you feel
I
like
do.
you're pretty much
Yes, I feel very
yeah,
different about it now. I would never have thought I would get to this point. Um,
yeah,
and good or bad, my dad knew a lot of people in our area, so it seems like everywhere I went, someone would stop me and try to tell me how great my dad was, and how wonderful is that was. I would, like, lose it, and then they'd feel awful. So it was a nice, great
yeah,
chain reaction of just a lot of people feeling terrible for
yeah,
talking to me. But,
right.
not so much anymore. But there is hope, is kind of what I took from that, that as awful as it was, and the place I was in has kind of changed since then.
You really never know how you're gonna react until you're there. Obviously, you came into my life as, like, a prevalent character after my parents were both gone, but still, you were very, very aware of my grieving process, and I actually in one of the blog posts that I found, I don't remember if this made it into the book, I might have cut it out, I can't remember, but one of the posts that I had written said something along the lines of, and I know that it was you that said this, "I don't know how to be there for you because I haven't lost what you've lost, but I can try by doing XYZ, or I can, I'll sit with you or whatever." And it's interesting because obviously you've seen many people, I'm sure, go through loss, but whenever you're the one going through it, you just don't know how you're going to react. And it's
Right.
really an interesting point because your dad is a local legend, very well known in the area. So that's something that I can't imagine being out in public and sort of running into people that knew him, and
Yeah.
you might not have been in a place where you were ready
I
to
definitely
deal with
wasn't.
that.
I
It must be
literally
hard.
looking back, I'm like, "Oh, sorry, everybody," because I really just couldn't speak. It was bad, and then I, like, ended up crying, and they're like, felt horrible. It was like this whole chain reaction. I'm like, "Oh, I can't even get it together enough to pretend." So
Do you think that that helped you in the long run? Like, do you think that that was a healthy way of you processing your grief at that time and place?
So for me, I went from like full speed ahead, like doing all the funeral stuff, making the arrangements, doing this,
Yeah,
like doing, to then nothing was happening. And that's when I just shut down. Um,
yeah.
I do. I actually do think that, because I'm one who's always communicating and wanting to talk about things and have people talk to me. But I think I needed to sit with that on my own and go through the motions. And I definitely didn't rush it. And I tend to rush healing and getting over things, but I definitely did not rush that.
I think I had a very delayed sense of grief because of the fact that I am so bad at vocalizing my emotions and at showing my emotions. Again, I can do it in writing all day long. I can
Right.
write what I'm feeling at any given moment, but I think it took me years to really sit with that and, like, be able to process, and sometimes I look back and think, "Man, I wish that I would've just allowed myself to feel it," and that's something that in the book I go through, half is the old blog post and then half is my present day thoughts on it, and a lot of it is looking back and being like, "God, I was trying so hard to be positive for this person or, convince everyone that I was fine," and even in the chapter about my mom's memorial, all of it is, "Oh my god, like, thank you so much for coming and, for treating it as a celebration instead of a really depressing day." And as I was writing, like, present day, I was like, "This is bullshit.
Right.
That was not a good day. That was one of the worst days of my life," and I'm sitting there trying to convince myself that it was great. But that, I think, is something that in looking back at that especially, I wish, because we didn't have a traditional funeral, so we didn't have that viewing. It was very non-traditional, which was true to my mom's character, but at the same time, I do think that it maybe didn't allow for that breakdown. And my dad we had a Catholic mass for him, and I felt like that was
That's interesting.
so cathartic.
That's what I was gonna ask you, like, if what difference you felt between the 2 with the grieving, and do you think it was
Yeah.
because of the ceremonies or the traditions, or do you think it was more because it was a prolonged process and you had more quiet time?
Yeah, I think I think maybe a little bit of both. I think for my mom's, I probably was preparing myself for months for how I was going to act at that
Okay.
event, and for my dad's, because it had happened so much faster, I didn't really have time to sort of prepare, like, how I was gonna navigate that. I do think there was an element of it being that ceremonial thing. I'm not a practicing Catholic, my dad was, it was important to him, and so that was one of the reasons that we did that, but I am so glad, and we had a small ceremony at my mom's, but I don't think I wish that that would have been a separate thing. I wish that there would have been a ceremony, excuse me, where we could have all just fallen apart and felt it 100% and then celebrated that life. I think that's maybe the way that I wish I would have
Do
dealt with that.
you feel in any way that you gave more respect to your dad than your mom because of that? And
Yeah, probably. I
I'm
mean, I
asking
think
your feelings. I'm not saying that that is at all. I feel like they were 2
yeah,
completely separate people, and what you did for your mom, if I know your mom from your stories, that is 100% what your mom would have wanted. So I think you
yeah.
made the right choice, but I'm just curious, like, with that.
I think that it's really interesting because by the time obviously, again, I lost my parents quite close together, so my dad's was less than 2 years after my mom's, but because my mom's death was so it was in the forefront of our mind for literally a year as it was, approaching, we all my family was not only dealing with losing her, there was a lot of discussion about death and grief and how to navigate
Right,
that. And I had a lot of conversations with my dad, and I obviously didn't know at the time that that would sort of be
right,
setting the foundation for losing him as well, but I think I recognized more after my mom's memorial that a funeral is not really for the dead, it's more for the living, and I think that it's
right.
great to honor them however they would wanna be honored, but I think for my dad's, because of what we sort of learned from my mom's and maybe from the things that I still hadn't felt like I had dealt with, somebody had suggested, "Oh, we should do a Catholic mass because that's what your dad would want," and if it were my mom, I would have said, "Absolutely not. We're not doing it. That's not what she wanted, or that's not
Right,
what, we envisioned," because we tried to keep it positive, but then I think
right.
after going through that process, I realized, no, actually, that's actually a really important part of the process is for family and friends to be able to come and pay respects the way that they grieve as well.
So, maybe whenever you start to get down on yourself at all by the way that you were acting and your happiness and everything else,
Mhm.
you can kind of see that as what you gave your mom and you wanted to respect your mom's wishes. And while it was difficult for you, you made the best of the situation. And it wasn't a depressing, sad day. You wanted it to be happy. You wanted it to be exactly what your mom would want.
Yeah, I think you're right on that.
So, on another note,
Thanks, coach.
join us.
Well, that was so joyful. I really enjoyed that
I
conversation. Let's take a moment. Let's break up that depression with a little nod to our best friend, ChatGPT. And let's talk about some of the suggestions that she had for the title of this podcast,
And then you will see why we chose life and death.
Life and Death. One of ChatGPT's suggestions was life's punchlines.
Okay, that's actually the least awful, I feel like, of what you're going to say. Like, that's the most like, "Oh, okay." Like, I wouldn't use it, but not horrible.
It's not the worst, because it does get worse. Then you have the upward spiral. You like
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah, I did actually.
That was yeah. Stars and Stripes, Tea and Triumph.
Terrible.
Now, another reminder, if we haven't already discussed it, because I'm not exactly sure how this is all gonna come together. I live in the United Kingdom, and Jenna lives in the United States of America.
Yes.
So, that is the Stars and Stripes, Tea and Triumph.
Did it know that we did when I gave to what did we put in? What was the prompt?
Well, I gave my Social Security number and my entire background
Okay, that makes
and
sense then.
history.
Gotcha.
Life history, mother's maiden
Perfect.
name, basically everything that anybody would ever need to
Totally makes sense
hack
then.
any of my accounts I
Totally
had
makes
given
sense.
ChatGPT. Yep, yep. Then you have T talk transformation. Not
I
exactly not our vibe.
not
Not
our
our vibe.
vibe.
The Brit and the
I do
Yank,
love that. That's so awful on so many ways.
it just feels like almost
I mean,
derogatory. Like it
it's
feels
bad, yes.
inappropriate,
I do know.
Two sides, one heart. Is that a heart? And then the last one that you said I would make fun of us was from heartbreak to
That's so
hilarity.
dumb. So
So
here's why
stupid.
I think that's
Absolutely
dumb.
the dumb.
For me, whenever you hear or, like, when I hear heartbreak well, first of all, let me ask you, what do you think of when you hear heartbreak?
I think of being broken up with.
Yes. So,
What?
like, for me, that's very,
Okay.
like I thought you were, like, gonna go totally in a different direction, and I'm like, you literally just did not help me with this. Um,
And then did I surprise you by saying what you thought and then got
yeah, that threw me off. I was ready to rebound,
because
but
I said
then
the
you
right
you
answer.
jumped right in. It was good. You did,
So
you
I said
did.
the right answer and it
Good
surprised you.
job.
I love that.
You did. Well, I
I
mean, you
love
didn't
that.
surprise me, but I was a little worried because once I put it out there, I'm like, maybe that isn't what everybody thinks. But for me, heartbreak just goes to like
Yeah.
relationship. So for me, as a life coach who works with relationships, totally works. But you, as a death, grief author,
Right.
that meant
Right.
nothing.
I wish I would have named my book From Heartbreak to Hilarity.
I mean, yes.
So Jenna, we talked a little bit about our backgrounds and the titles that we vetoed. What is the reason that we are doing this podcast?
We are doing this. Actually, I'm not even sure. Like, I think I don't know if we were talking or it was right when your book came out, and I really started to, like, try to get my social media presence out there where I was like, "We should do a podcast." I did not 100% know you were gonna be like, "Yeah." Why didn't I know that? Like, of course you were gonna be like, "Yes, do a
I know.
podcast."
I should have known.
That
I've
so, yeah,
actually been waiting for the moment that you asked me to do a podcast our entire friendship.
perfect. Perfect. So, you we
So,
ran with it, and I think it
yeah.
took us, like, all but, like, a minute to come up with what we could be talking about. I think both of us, are in our careers to help other people and to allow other people to have a voice, and if they are in a position that they can have a voice, to have somebody be able to verbalize maybe ways that could help them or make them feel not as alone. My goal and what we've talked about and your goal to bring people on here that have lived through many different things, not just a death necessarily, but maybe a loss of relationship, a huge life transition, just anything really that someone else could listen and relate to. My hope is that we have people kind of following along and sending us questions that they would like to ask, but don't maybe have the courage to ask somebody. Love to have people on here to talk to us. It's really just to bring people together. That was my goal. Would you say yours aligns with that?
Absolutely. I think I have told you this before, but one of the things I realized that you have been life coaching me since we became friends and since I before I realized I was supposed to be paying you for it. So, now that I know that,
Which
I
you do
feel
not
like
pay
I
me for.
need
Please just clarify that.
I know, I'm just kidding. But I remember distinctly a moment shortly after we became friends when I was going through something difficult and you said, "We are going to get through this." And I remember thinking, "Oh my gosh, nobody's ever said we." And it was such a small detail or seemingly small detail, probably one that you don't even really think about because it's probably just ingrained in you and something that you say. But something that I remember sticking out to me so much and being like, "Oh, it feels so nice to feel like I'm not by myself." I think that your not patients, we don't call them patients,
Clients
clients. Your clients are so lucky because I remember how much better that made me feel before I even realized I was one of your patients
or clients.
or clients. But yes, I completely agree. I want to help people feel less alone. I think that you have always made people feel less alone, myself included, and I'm sort of just along for the ride.
That is so inaccurate.
All right. So, Jenna, do we want to open this up to people that would like to be a part of our
I would love
podcast
to do that.
and talk to us?
And it doesn't need to be a massive transition. It doesn't need to be it could be a change of a job. It could be, finally taking a trip that you've been waiting to take forever and just the anxieties that come along with that. So it doesn't have to be this massive thing. Or it could be something that you have found that has worked for you to deal with challenges. We want to make this as broad as possible to include as many people as we can.
To include life, death, and everything in between, which is not our title,
It's
but
not,
could have
but
been.
it sounded good, but life or death is more like, oh, get it just there.
Yeah, it's just quick and
I
painful,
was gonna say
actually.
that's like
Quick and
us, but I guess
yeah. It's actually really painful. Thank you so much for listening to our first
yes,
episode.
it was fun.
I have had such a great time hanging out with you from across an ocean,
Same.
Jenna.
My only goal for this podcast was to hopefully, and I can hear me saying my S's, that my S's are not as essy. Can I tell a little story right before we leave? And this is what we're gonna end on. When I was in
Yes.
grade school, I may have been a little not normal. I used to pretend that I had a lisp so I could get out of class and go to speech and get stickers
Mhm.
and, not be in class. Well, then I heard myself on this, and it sounds like all the time with my S's, so I feel like it's a big circle of life, and
It's karma.
it is karma. So, yes, on that note, let's hope for
Don't
soft
pretend to have a list.
S's, and a fantastic week.
There's something that I would like to I don't like toxic positivity, and I've briefly mentioned that I think that I was trying to be too positive during my mom's illness, but I did come across something called a glimmer.
Yes.
I didn't come across this. It was a meme.
It was a
Somebody shared
meme.
it or
It
a
was a
tweet
meme.
or something. It was a
It was
meme.
a
It was a meme that somebody shared, or maybe a tweet, a twit. I don't know, or what do they call them now?
memes are
What do they call
Twitter,
them?
tweet,
But it's X now.
X.
It's not Twitter.
Hmm, it's called an X.
Anyway, I somebody else shared it and I loved it, but it's basically like the opposite of a trigger.
Okay.
It's a
I love
glimmer.
it.
It's something that like, a nice little positive thing that happened that you're maybe grateful for.
Perfect.
So, should we talk about some glimmers that we had?
Love
Should
it.
we maybe make that a thing like on each of our
I think that's
episodes?
perfect.
I'd like to tell you the glimmer that I've been saving up for the last 3
Oh,
weeks.
wow, go.
I work at a hotel. This is actually not even really relevant to the story. I work at a hotel. I'm not gonna say whether or not I live at that hotel or on the property of the hotel,
Because people
but I
may
might.
stalk you.
They might stalk me. But our hotel is dog friendly, and there was a dog that came to stay with us. He was a puppy. He was a Norfolk Terrier, and his name was Gerald.
Oh, I love that.
That was my glimmer I've been saving up for the last 2 weeks. Gerald.
That
What
is
a name.
that's fantastic. I didn't write down
Gerald.
a glimmer because I am way not prepared like you. I'm more of a think on the moment, think in the moment.
I love that.
Here it is. Before, I used to not wanna get up and work out. You don't wanna, like, you wake up and you, like, have all these excuses, but I have found that I have found a person that motivates me and makes me feel good about myself, that there's no morning that I get up at 5 and don't wanna get in the car and go do my workout. And when I leave there, I always feel so much better, mentally, not even physically, well, physically also, but mentally, I just feel so much clearer. And that's
I don't actually physically feel better at all.
I mean, I do. I'm a little sore, but yes, I do feel a lot better. But I value that immensely, knowing that a lot of people don't have that opportunity, to be physical and on their feet, and I really appreciate that.
That is a great glimmer.
Thanks.
Oh, damn it. Now I feel bad about mentioning Gerald.
Why?
Just Gerald?
Gerald's the
Fucking
cutest. I haven't
Gerald
even
is
seen him, and I think he's the
Yeah,
cutest.
but God, you're being thankful that you have legs and arms that work, and I'm thankful for a little puppy named Gerald that I met 2 weeks ago. I didn't even come up with anything recent.
That's so glimmery, though.
I am so glad that we got to share these glimmers with each other and with all of our 3 listeners. I really hope they're enjoying
That may be
this.
related to us.
Thank you for tuning in to our first episode of the Life and Death Podcast. If you'd like to get in touch with us, please email us at lifeanddeathpodcast@gmail.com.
Ups and downs, finding smiles beyond the frowns. Stay with us, we'll light the way. See you next time, bright and gay.